just having good leadership and having the right people on your team make a big difference. And as for my coaching business, I can do that from anywhere. There's not restriction the way there is with therapy. And I have traveled endlessly. That makes it really easy to say, do I want to have this be a hybrid work trip and travel trip, or do I just want to disconnect?
Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance-based private therapy practice and a multi-six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance-based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. I'm here with Patrick Casale today, and I'm so excited to have him. He's got so many different perspectives on being a traveling therapist. I'm not even sure where this podcast is going to take us, but I'm excited to see and help you guys learn more about what you can do being a therapist and a traveling therapist. So Patrick, welcome. I'd love if you would introduce yourself and just maybe tell us, how did you go from being your typical therapist in an office, well, actually, I know you used to work in agencies, to a traveling therapist?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Kim. And I love the idea that behind your group and your podcast. I've always really loved traveling in general. So, when I was working in my community mental health job, you don't really get a lot of paid time off. And ultimately, if I wanted to take it and I wanted to travel, it had to be very strategic and intentional, and you had to save up hours. And it was never a stress-free process. Not that travel is often stress-free, but, once I joined or started my private practice, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have the same goals, right? Like autonomy, freedom, flexibility, more time for themselves, more time to travel. And I always felt like those were my values and the reasons behind what I was doing. And I didn't start off traveling as much as I do now. I was needing money and I didn't know what I was doing in private practice for the most part. And once I started getting a rhythm and a routine, it was like, okay, why are we doing this ultimately? Why entrepreneurship, why private practice? And again, it comes back to those values. So started building in probably 8 weeks a year for travel, which after COVID hit, it led to 12 weeks. And then as I've transitioned out of being a therapist and more into a private practice coach and a group practice owner, it's more like 16 weeks a year. And, eventually the goal is to just probably travel half of the year and be in Asheville the other half. If we didn't have dogs, I probably would already be doing that. So that's just always been a passion of mine. I love international travel, especially. That's something I'm really passionate about, mainly to experience other cultures, experience other foods, learn about how people live. I really like getting out of my comfort zone. So it's just something I really look forward to. And, before COVID hit, I had trips planned to Japan and Vietnam and New Zealand and Iceland. And then it was like, oh man, everything goes up in flames, and trying to get some of that back now.
Oh gosh, I know. It's been so hard. I've got a cruise plan through Greece and Turkey, and I'm kind of watching the cruise lines. Cruises are still getting canceled all the time. So I'm really hoping that COVID's almost gone for all of us and we can just resume our traveling lifestyles for sure. So, okay, so 16 weeks a year, and you used to be, a therapist mostly, but now you've transitioned into this entrepreneurial type position. Can you talk a little bit about that process? How you're still running all these income streams and being a therapist? I think you're still seeing clients some, right? A little bit?
Yeah, a couple. I've got about 5 left on my caseload from 35.
Yeah, you're right where I am with all this stuff. I'm kind of over with the therapy part. Yeah, so can you talk about that a little bit? How are you managing all that while you're traveling?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you need to, so often we hear the words like passive income, right? And I laugh at that just because nothing is truly ever passive. And there's a lot of legwork that goes in on the front end in order to make things run smoothly. So right now, being a podcast host, being a practice building coach, and owning a group practice, a lot of those things don't need me to be directly involved all the time. And my group practice, especially as it's grown exponentially this year, having office admin staff and clinical leadership staff, really important for me to not have to be involved in day-to-day operations. I'm kind of like, okay, if it's operational, you go to our admin staff. If it's clinical, you go to our clinical director. And then if you can't get the answers, you come to me, right? Because ultimately, I don't want to be the one responding, even if I do know everything or all the answers that they may need. I just don't have the time to be as available for that. So just having good leadership and having the right people on your team make a big difference. And as for my coaching business, I can do that from anywhere. There's not restriction the way there is with therapy. And I have traveled endlessly and done coaching from Iceland, and I've done coaching from Hawaii, and I've done coaching from all over. I just always have to be mindful of the time zones. But that makes it really easy to say, do I want to have this be a hybrid work trip and travel trip, or do I just want to disconnect? And, I am someone who enjoys working, so I oftentimes will make exceptions when I can. I always let my coaching clients know this is not going to be something we can schedule. It's going to have to be more spur of the moment, like, hey, I've got an hour. Do you have an hour? Do you want to make this work? Nice. That's served me really well. It allows me to have that leeway and that flexibility. I don't have to be tied down. I can go out and have some excursions or exploration time. And then if I find some downtime and I want to work, I can just let them know, hey, do you want to make this happen today, or do you want to wait until I get back?
That's really cool.
And then, it's worked out well, and I always tell them before I leave, right? Like, I'm going to be away. I may not be available. Like, you can send me Voxer messages, you can reach out, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to support, while I'm away. And most people are pretty understanding of that too. The podcast thing, I haven't really given it a go yet internationally, just lugging gear around and microphones and all that stuff. But that may be a thing as this continues to unfold and as the world continues to open up.
Yeah, I've been lugging my blue Yeti mic along with me. in our little red convertible, we have this much space, and I just keep trying to take this microphone with me so I can do these podcast episodes. Yeah, I totally get that. Gotcha. Okay, so I really like that, setting the expectation that you're just not going to be available on a routine schedule while you're traveling. Yeah. That's
it has
really
to happen.
Good.
Otherwise, I would be, oh my God, I'm in this country. I want to do these things, but I have this appointment scheduled at 2:00, and 2:00 might mean 8:00 over here. So it's just something that doesn't feel sustainable. I think it's just, again, being really transparent about it. Even when I have people sign up for coaching, hey, I do travel a lot, and there are going to be times when I'm not available to respond to Voxer messages or schedule a coaching session. If you look at my calendar and you don't see any availability, don't stress out. Just reach out to me and we can talk about how we can get something scheduled. And for some people that works really well, and some people probably want to have a little bit more consistency. So it just kind of depends on what people want to.
Yeah, and I think in picking a coach, you kind of match yourself to their style anyway. So probably most are attracted to this lifestyle you live, I would think, like the entrepreneurship and the traveling and, maybe being more flexible with you. Absolutely. Yeah.
It makes a big difference. And even when I was in private practice, I was very transparent with my clients of I travel a lot. If you want a therapist who's going to be in the office more consistently, that's probably not going to be me. And nice. I think that reiterating that over and over throughout the therapeutic relationship, hey, a vacation's coming up. Hey, I'm going to be out of the office from this time to this time. And I've always asking them, do you want more support? Do you want to find someone to meet every other week with? Do you want to transition to a therapist who's around more often? And I think as long as we're willing to have those conversations, then it ends up working out really well and really smoothly, instead of just feeling fearful that our clients are just going to leave because we aren't working for a part of the month or part of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so important. I get that question all the time. Well, do you tell your clients that you're traveling? And I'm like, yeah, most of them are kind of on the journey with me at this point. I don't mind that self-disclosure. Yeah. And I think it models a fun lifestyle, and a good, follow your dreams kind of thing. that a lot of people are afraid to do. So yeah, I totally get that. So I'm curious, as a group practice owner, do you try to foster that lifestyle or try to really help people if they want to be, gone once a month, or like, how do you work around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most of my staff would say that during interviews, they feel like it's too good to be true when I tell them I encourage them to like work 4 day weeks and travel, as often as they can and take time off because I think this career is just hard enough as it is. And we have an intense and increasing amount of burnout in the profession. And I understand that I have a lot of privilege and that I'm grateful for the ability to step away, but I also want to encourage them to do the same things to the best of their abilities. And they get the best of both worlds working in this group practice because not only do they get all the support in the world and all the things that I offer, but they also get private practice coaching from someone who is a known name in the industry now. And I want them to feel like they can create business models similarly so that they don't feel like, hey, this may have to be the rest of my career. I don't think that suits them. That doesn't really suit me. I don't want them to get to a point where they're like, I don't really want to do this anymore, but I feel like I have to. I think that's a disservice for the clientele and for them and for me. So just encouraging them to step more into that mindset of you are allowed to have more flexibility and autonomy. And I don't really care when they work, what their schedules are, as long as they're seeing the client numbers that we've talked about. And if they want to work evenings only, go ahead. You want to work weekends, go for it. If you want to only do mornings, like I don't really care. And at the end of the day, if they want to take time off, I just ask them that they let the team know, ask them that they forward their emails and their voicemails. And I want them to be really transparent about when they're going to be back in the office returning messages, not when they're going to be back from a trip, but when are you actually going to be responding to communication? Because I think that sets up a really transparent, intentional sort of communication with the clients that they serve. And I just really think that's important.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Yeah. So again, attracting the type of probably clinician even that likes your style and the way you're living your life. That's really cool. Yeah. So I'm trying to think where to go. I have so many questions for you, really.
Ask away.
One cool thing I know is that you've incorporated travel into your entrepreneurship by starting these retreats now. And I know soon, I think, right? You have an international retreat coming up.
Next Friday, going to Ireland.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm going to Costa Rica on a retreat next Saturday.
With,
So that's
with
really
Megan,
cool.
yeah?
Yeah, with Megan. Yes, it's going to be so
Nice.
fun. Okay, so can you talk about that process? Like, because I know there are clinicians listening that probably want to have other income streams. They are therapists, but maybe they want to start retreats or offer international type things so they can travel, but also have some income coming in. I'm just wondering, maybe if you could just talk about that process a little bit, or your decisions into Ireland, just the whole thing would be really helpful to people, I think, that might want to get into this aspect of the entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before I started my private practice coaching business, my goal and idea was a travel coaching business, which was to help
Oh.
helpers step away from their work, travel more, immerse themselves in culture, and step out of their comfort zones. And then COVID hit, and I had to pivot, as so many of us do as entrepreneurs. And I was like, well, I'm really good at helping people get the best out of themselves and build their practices. I'll do this for a while and see what happens. But I always knew that I wanted to incorporate travel in some way or another. I just didn't know how it was going to look. And by attending retreats and summits from people in the industry and just knowing how much people want travel, want connection, want support, want to combine all of the things, I was like, I really want to try this. And my process is probably different than a lot of people's, where I work through a lot of imperfect action, or like building the plane as you fly it, so to speak, because I am a recovering perfectionist. I could get really in my head about this has to be absolutely perfect and organized before I can launch it. And instead, I've realized for the last 2 years that most of my success has come from just putting the idea out there and then figuring it out. And what I did for Ireland, this will be my 7th time over there. I've got heritage and I love the country. And I just was like, hey, if I planned a small Ireland retreat for people who want to build and grow their businesses, incorporating food and community and experience and business building, who would want to come? And the responses were like, I got like 50 or 60 people who were like, yep, I'm in. Just let me know when. And I was
Oh
like,
my
oh
God.
shit, now I have to figure this out. Um, and I did, I just was like, okay, you've got to choose dates. That's the first step. Now you have to find a venue, and it has to be big enough where it can fit enough people, not only to make money, but so that people aren't like sleeping in common rooms together and whatever the case may be. So I can't tell you how long I spent going down that rabbit hole, but I found a cool, like old historic base, and it's not in a place in Ireland where most people would even know exists, but it's a small town with a castle in the town and like one pub. And they have 8 cottages on site. All of them have 2
Oh,
rooms. So it was just perfect. And the woman who owns it has been helping me like navigate getting the catering set up. And I hired a bartender every night and kegs of Guinness. And we hired a live Irish band
oh
for
my
St.
gosh.
Patrick's Day. And then we'll have 2 group tours that take us like throughout some really cool parts of Ireland. And my goal was to incorporate good food, good community building, good connection, and then ultimately also business building so that you can get the best of both worlds while also scratching that itch of like wanderlust and travel. So for a lot of these people, it's going to be their first time in Europe. And that creates stress on
Wow.
my end, right? Where it's like, oh my God, travel never goes as planned. Flights are going to get delayed. People are
Oh
going to
my
like
God.
not listen to all the things I've told them to do in terms of like COVID stuff. So a week away right now, I'm like, I'm a little anxious, but it's
I
sold out
bet. Oh my gosh.
and it feels great. Like I'm feeling very good about, the thought is always like, are people going to think it's valuable? Are they going to think it was worth the money? Would they do it again? And I have that mindset all the time. So I am excited. I am nervous, but I think that's normal. This will be
I
the
think
first one that I
so.
ever do.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I would be so nervous. And I've got that inner perfectionistic thing too. So I would be like, oh my gosh, worried about all the details coming together. But I really like what you said about like that would be a cool idea. I'm just gonna put it out there. And once I do, then I'll just fill in all the spaces and I'm gonna make it work. That's really great.
It's just my process, and that's with
Yeah.
everything. Like when I started my coaching business, just put it out to the world. When I started my podcast, just put it out to the world and then figure it out. And too many of us stay in that mindset of, I have to know all the details before I can put this out there and people are going to
Mhm.
think that it's valuable. So I've had to work really hard to get through that because I do think that creates momentum and it also reduces some of the fear. So my goal right now is to have 2 international retreats a year and 2 domestic. So I've already got one planned in Asheville in June, and I've
Wow.
sold 11 of the 15 spots. And again, building the catering, building all the events around it. And I'm a really good planner. I really like finding cool restaurants and places to do things and local businesses to support. So, like in Asheville, I've got a friend who owns a hibachi food truck. He's going to drive that up to the venue one night and he's going to cook for everyone. I rented like a tour bus that goes around Asheville and has a local band on the bus and stops at like different breweries around the city and like stuff like that. Just again, community building, fun, food, experience, cool places that people want to go, and then building your business on top of it. Because I find myself to feel the most creative and energized when I'm in movement and when I'm traveling and when I'm in different spaces. So I think for a lot of us that feels really true. And I want to
Hmm.
keep them small, like less than 15 people. I don't want to go down the road of like 200-person summits and retreats. Like good for the people who are doing those things. I don't have that energy as a more introverted human being.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of work. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, I'm thinking, okay, when is it in August? Maybe I need to come to this. Sounds
the
pretty
the
fun.
Asheville one will be June 9th to the 12th. And Allison Per Year from Abundance Practice Building will be pretty involved because she's also in Asheville.
Oh, cool.
So we're kind of tag teaming it. I'm doing all the planning because she was like, I am not a planner. I don't want to do any of this. And I was like, okay, well, I love it. But we're kind of we have 2 very different voices. So I think it'll be
Mm,
cool to kind of have 2 different coaching perspectives involved.
that's really awesome. Yeah. So have you planned the other internationals that you're going to do? Do you already know where you want to go?
Yeah, so my goal is to always like capture the momentum from the last event to put into the next event for the marketing side
Oh,
to show
nice.
like, hey, this is awesome. People are having a great time. They got a lot out of it. You elicit a little bit of like, FOMO. I wish I was there, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
And then so hopefully the Ireland retreat will lead to selling out the Asheville retreat, and then the Asheville retreat will lead to the next destination, which I believe is going to be Barcelona or Lisbon. And
Wow.
then we'll do another domestic, which will probably be New Orleans. I want to do them in places that people want to go. I don't
Yeah.
want to do them in like these obscure locations where it's like, that sounds like a cool idea, but do I really want to visit like, Waco, Texas? Probably not. Like,
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. That's excellent. Oh, I love Lisbon so much. You were recently there, right?
yeah, I'm
Over in
actually going back to take my wife over there in May.
Oh my God. How fun. Yeah. Oh, cool. So where are all the places you've already got booked that you'll be going? I just love to ask people this question.
Oh man, like I don't have I have less booked this year than I usually have. So right now I've got Ireland for the retreat.
Hmm.
We're flying in and out of Barcelona in May, but we're going to spend most of the time in Portugal because she's never been. Then I've got the Asheville in June. I'm going to Nashville. Actually, I skipped over that to
Oh
speak at the
yeah.
Not Your Typical Psychotherapist conference. Yeah, it's going to be good to meet you in person. Going to Ernesto's conference in Hawaii in August. And then
Wow.
I am coaching at a retreat in Cabo in October. So I am sure I will fill in the gaps. And like my wife will joke and be like, she only gets 4 weeks of PTO a year.
Oh, really? Oh
So she
gosh.
has to be very intentional about how she wants to spend them. And me, on the other hand, I'm like, I want to go to this place and this place and this place. But we have the type of marriage and relationship where she's like, I know you need to go and I encourage it. And it also helps her keep her peace of mind because I would probably drive her crazy if I was like stuck
Yeah.
in the house or in one place for too long. So
Oh, I
very
love
grateful for
that.
that.
Oh, that's such an important thing to figure out in your relationship, and just to respect the other's need to go. And yeah, luckily we finally worked it out where both of us can be remote and travel. He's got to stay in the United States, so that's one thing that we're having to stick to is just always just staying in the U.S. right now, but hopefully more international once this contract's up is what we're hoping. But yeah,
Gotcha.
that's amazing that she's really cool with it. And it kind of stinks that she's only got 4 weeks. I think that's part of this thing that we're building, entrepreneurship or our private practices, like building in how much time we want off and being able to do that, be our own bosses is just really cool. Yeah.
It's so important. And I wish she had more. And I know she does too, but
Yeah.
we just have to plan trips to places she really wants to go to. And that's fine with me. We have an arrangement that if I ever go somewhere internationally that she hasn't been, that she wants to go, regardless of whether I hate it or not, I have to be willing to go back.
Oh, I love
And I'm
that.
absolutely okay with that. I went to Iceland last May by myself for 8 days, and she has no interest in Iceland, and I hated Iceland. So she's like, "Yep, we can cross that off the list. I
Yeah.
never need to go there."
You hated Iceland? Your pictures looked so fun.
The pictures were great. Like it's such a beautiful country. I got to see the active volcano erupt from like a
Oh,
safe
yeah.
distance over and over and over again, and that felt like a once in a lifetime type of
Mm.
experience, but it just wasn't for me. I'm a traveler who likes to be social and like connect with other people from the countries and talk to them and have a drink together and food together. And Icelandic culture, maybe it's because the population is so sparse and like there are no people living in that country basically outside of Reykjavik. Like people
Hmm.
are not exactly unfriendly, but they're not friendly. So
Mm.
you would go into a pub or a restaurant. It was in the midst of COVID and Iceland opening its doors back up.
Yeah.
And I would go in, the restaurant would be empty. And they would say to me, "Do you have a reservation?" And I'm like, "Do I need one?" And they're like, "Yeah, you need to have one to eat here." And I'm like, "Okay." And she said, "When would you like to make one?" I'm like, "Right
Right
now?"
now.
And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, then we can seat you over here." And I was just like, this is the most bizarre. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. And there were
Oh my
days
God.
driving around the country in my camper van where I was talking to myself because I hadn't seen another human being in like 3 or 4 days. And I was just like,
No.
I am going to lose it in this country. And it was very testing, but I guess I'm glad I went.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about up there. Like it seems really pretty, but it does seem sort of desolate and cold. I'm not really into the cold places at all.
Yeah. It
Hmm.
was thankfully like 50 degrees, which felt good, but like, yeah, the lack of population, the food sucks. And people in Iceland will say, we know the food sucks. And I'm like, this country, like, I don't get the appeal, but I guess if you're an adventure traveler and you want to get off the grid, then it's perfect. But for
Wow.
me, Irish like pub culture is my jam. I want to be, even if I'm not talking to people, at least
Hmm.
around people. So lesson learned.
I hear you. Oh gosh, it's been so great talking to you. I feel like I could just talk to you forever about all these places you've been. But would you mind just taking a minute and letting people know how they can reach you, where they can find you, if they want to do retreats or coaching, or I know you've got courses. Just how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So my website is allthingspractice.com. That's where you can find information on retreats. You can get on the retreat waitlist. You can sign up for the Asheville one that has a couple of spots left. And that also has links to my podcast, the All Things Private Practice podcast, which is all about just entrepreneurial mindset, the emotional side of being a small business owner, normalizing
Hmm.
fear, failure, and imposter syndrome. And then you can also join my Facebook group, All Things Private Practice. I'll be launching a 4-month Take the Leap private practice coaching cohort in April. So we've got some spots for that as well.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. I just love following you on social media and watching everything you're doing. I just think it's amazing. You have so much to offer everyone, all these clinicians listening.
I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you loved this episode, please leave a review.